Welcome to our Biz Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Cuthbert, Creative Director at Baker Creative. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit subscribe so you can get notified when new content comes out. Please share this with anyone who could be inspired by it.
Bruce Harkey became the president and CEO of Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens in 2017 after serving as executive director since 2007. Bruce previously was a manager for Honda of America Manufacturing and completed an international business program with Honda in Tokyo. A graduate of Michigan State University, where he studied landscape architecture and package engineering, Bruce earned a certificate in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace from the University of South Florida and served on the boards of multiple organizations. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks for joining us on our podcast. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much.
So, how has being immersed in the Japanese culture really helped you in your current role?
My interest in Japan was something that started way back when I was a kid. So I grew up in Detroit, and my grandmother lived in Dearborn, so we would go to the Dearborn Public Library, and I would always check out books on horticulture and gardening. And I love bonsai, and that led me to an interest in Japan. And so for me, my love of Japan and the culture has been instrumental, not only in my personal interests, but also my career path. I did work for Honda Motor Company and Honda of America for a total of 18 years before moving to the Conservatory. And it was because of my interest in Japan that led me down that path.
So what is your current role in cultivating world-class conservatory and your previous roles with an international auto manufacturer have in common?
I think there are actually a lot of things that are in common. We're doing profiles for part of our onboarding, and also descriptions of what the different departments do. And I spent 18 years at Honda, and I learned a lot about business and about continuous improvement and product development and finance and HR. And so I'm always talking about Honda. And one of my colleagues on my leadership team took the initiative to fill out my profile and did kind of a tongue-in-cheek, like, well, what's your favorite thing about the conservatory? How much I can talk about Honda, so. But it did have a tremendous impact on me, and I'll give you one example with our exhibitions, whether it's Conservatory Glow or Pumpkins Aglow. There's a lot of long-term planning and then major capital projects as well. So all of the project management experience that I have working for Honda has been very helpful. When you think about the development of a car, it's really no different than the development of a new exhibition like topiaries that we spoke about. You have to come up with a concept, and then after the concept is finalized, then you move into the development stage. And after the development is completed, then you plan more in the short term, and then you finally implement that exhibition. And so I think there's a lot of great similarities between a manufacturing and a research company and what I'm doing here at the Conservatory.
Now, how has the Children's Garden really impacted attendance for the location?
Oh, it's been phenomenal. So the Children's Garden opened in 2018. And prior to that opening, we had 8,000 members. And within 3-4 months of the Children's Garden opening, the number jumped to 12,000. And we've been able to maintain a very high level of attendance. The thing that I think is really important about the Scotts Miracle-Gro Foundation Children's Garden is the need to make sure that it's accessible to everyone in our community. So for me personally, growing up in Detroit, we would go on one family vacation a year. And when I was probably 10 years old, we went to Niagara Falls, and we stopped at the School of Horticulture in Niagara Falls. And that was the moment that I decided to go into horticulture as a career. And so when the Children's Garden opened, it was very important for me to make sure that everyone who was a child in Columbus had access to it. So the same day that we announced the opening of the Children's Garden, at the ceremony, we also announced community days. We're open to residents of City of Columbus and Franklin County on the first Sunday of every month for free. And then we recently, I guess about a year ago, joined a program called Museums for All, which allows access to the conservatory, both for the day experience and the special events in the evening, for only $3 per person. And so our free and reduced attendance as a percentage of the total is about 17% now. It's about an 82% increase over last year.
That's wonderful. So if for someone who's never been, is there something that surprises people the most about the conservatory?
Yeah, I think, I'll use an example of a family that came, they stumbled into the conservatory. I think they were looking for something to do. It was the father, the mother, and a 13-year-old daughter. And I was the manager on duty one Saturday afternoon. It was during the holidays last year. And we had a barbershop quartet. Of course, we had all the holiday decorations and conservatory aglow. And I saw the family when they first got to the conservatory. And then several hours later, they were leaving. And I happened to be down by the visitor center. And I asked them, what did they think? And they stumbled upon the conservatory. I saw the father humming along to the barbershop quartet. And we were joking about him joining the barbershop quartet. The daughter, who was 13 years old, which can be a tricky age, was absolutely enamored by the conservatory and taking photos and putting them on Instagram. And the mother was interested in having her 50th birthday party at the conservatory. And so I think the answer to your question is that when people come to the conservatory, I think they're surprised at the breadth and scope of everything that we do. When you think about a botanical garden, people probably have a certain image in mind, but we have, of course, butterflies during certain times of the year. And we have a Chihuly collection of glass artwork that is the largest collection in any botanical garden. We have a historic palm house built in 1895, one of 5 glass houses dating back to the Victorian era. So, and of course, the children's garden. And I think that people of every age find some way to connect with the conservatory, which is really great.
Why do you think that's so?
I think because we work really hard to make sure that we are a destination. We're a premier botanical garden destination, and we're an experience. And so our brand strategy for exhibitions, which is the lens that we look through when we're making decisions, is kinetic, accessible, immersive, and distinctive. And I think whether it's the Bruce Monroe exhibit or Pumpkins Aglow or Blooms and Butterflies, I think it's a very dynamic experience. But I also think it's one that becomes a shared experience for a group of families or friends. And a lot of the things that we do become traditions. One of our relatively new board members works for Nationwide, and she always talks about going to the conservatory from the time her kids were just born and taking a picture in front of the poinsettia tree. And they do it every single year, and it's part of their family tradition.
Oh, I think that's wonderful. I mean, you can't replace a wonderful memory like that.
That's right.
So how has the conservatory's alliance with Paul Bussey and Applied Imagination grown over the years?
Yeah, that when I first started the conservatory in 2007, it was either 7 or 8 that we had an exhibition of Paul Bussey's work. And of course, Paul Bussey was one of those people who was able to combine his 2 loves. He loved landscape architecture and he loved trains. And so he came up with this great idea of creating buildings made out of natural materials. And the exhibition that we hosted back in 2007, 2008 were all about the World Heritage sites and in major architectural installations around the world that he created in miniature out of natural materials, and they were in our biomes. And they had train tracks above you, and there was a passport for the kids to go on a tour around the world. So that was our first experience with Paul Bussey. And we opened an exhibition several years ago that is currently in the Mallway outside. And it's a multifaceted installation that includes 4 different zones, including a large set of buildings. The European buildings and the Western buildings were donated to the conservatory by John Wolfe's family after he passed away. And so there's that history and the legacy of John Wolfe. And so that installation is on view, and it was a rental exhibition, but everyone loved it so much that we decided to purchase it. We did kind of a rent to own program, and we have a great relationship with the studio, and they come and of course Paul has been here several times, and it's a great relationship that continues to evolve, and we reimagine it every season. So I think the guests really love it.
So what's the next level of the master plan?
Well, I can't reveal any secrets yet, but let me foreshadow what we're currently doing to prepare for what we're calling Master Plan 3.0. So we've done Master Plan 1.0 and 2.0 over the last 15 years. And that's brought amazing new experiences for the conservatory, including Pumpkins Aglow and Conservatory Aglow and the Children's Garden, of course, the Wells Barn, the amazing community garden campus. So we've done a lot of important investments that have allowed the conservatory to grow, to strengthen its financial position, which also allows us to expand our access program. So there's a really nice balance between access and earned revenue growth. And where we are today is we just completed a North Star visioning process. So it took about 6 months with lots of community impact to define what is the future position profile for the conservatory. And we aspire to be a premier botanical garden destination. And so we're in the process of looking at everything that we do and determining what does that mean. We do an annual board and leadership team retreat. We're going to go off to my predecessor's place, Longwood Gardens in Philadelphia next August, and get ideas. And that really does help with the success of our projects. We spent about 3 years researching children's gardens before we started the design process. But I think what you will see, consistent with that North Star position profile about being a premier botanical garden destination, is that we will continue to make significant investments in world-class botanical gardens. So in the Mallway area, the biomes could be reimagined. The other asset that is very important for us to preserve for future generations is the historic John F. Wolfe Palm House and Dorothy M. Davis Show House. Both of those buildings are some of the oldest structures in Columbus, dating back to the Victorian era. And there are only a handful of those kinds of places in the country. And so certainly restoration of those two spaces, perhaps starting in 2025, will be the foundation of Master Plan 3.0. So I think it's going to be very exciting for the community, but certainly our responsibility to not only build new things, but to make sure that we preserve these important assets that we have.
Now, some conservatories are more successful than others. And what do you think are the biggest things that many conservatories face today?
Conservatories, depending on their location, it can be, access to population. In the case of Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, we don't have that issue. We are only 3 miles from downtown Columbus. We're centrally located in a community that continues to grow and thrive. I think there are a number of challenges. I think one of the challenges for many conservatories is to make sure that they are presenting an experience that is welcoming to everyone in the community. And that's certainly been a focus of Franklin Park Conservatory. The Children's Garden is a great example. We heard from the community more experiences for families and children. And that led to the development of the Children's Garden. We have a robust access program, diversity, equity, and inclusion program. Last year, we partnered with 4 Black art initiative alliances, and we presented an exhibition called Resilience in Nature, which was inspired by something that we talk about quite a bit, that diversity in nature is its strength. And so we asked the artists to look at that theme and present their interpretation of it in a multimedia presentation. So I think the customer base and making sure you're developing programs for the customers is challenging. All nonprofit organizations struggle with financial sustainability, and that's been a real important focus for me, is striking the balance between growth and mission, but also making sure that the decisions that we're making strengthen our financial position. And I'm very proud to say that we've closed in the black 15 years in a row.
I would think that'd be very difficult. I mean, the challenge is to have that balance, really, to try to, rise all boats, but yet really trying to have everybody have some sort of level of accessibility.
Yes, for sure.
How do you feel that what you're doing there has really inspired community gardens in the community?
Well, that is one of the best examples of how the conservatory is not just here on this property, but we are out in the community. So the Growing to Green program, which is being managed by a very talented young man named Sean McKay in our community outreach and education department. That program has helped to start in the last 20 years over 300 community gardens and green spaces in Central Ohio. And it's a national model along with a number of other programs across the country. Years ago, we were partners with Scott's Miracle-Gro, and they were building community gardens across the country. And Bill Dawson, who was the coordinator of that program at the time and is now retired, he would travel with Scott's and he would provide that expertise in other communities like Philadelphia and Baltimore and Sacramento. So I think it's a really important program and just one example of how the community outreach and education department has an impact on the quality of life in our community. In the fall, if you haven't attended, I would encourage you to do so. We have a great awards celebration, and I always say it's sort of like the Academy Awards of the community gardening world. The Wells Barn is filled with several hundred people, and we give out awards for the best community garden, the best community gardener. And when those when those folks get up there and talk about the impact of the community gardening program in their community and in their lives, it's really touching. You know, one young man years ago said that after receiving the Community Gardener of the Year award, that if it weren't for that program, he would be dead or in jail. And when you hear that from a 15-year-old kid, you know that that program is having an impact, and it really inspires us and inspires our donors to continue supporting it.
Oh, of course, that gives them access that they never would have had. It gives the ability to give them some tools that maybe, somebody doesn't always have access to a master gardener. It's just wonderful to be able to have that kind of resource. So if someone came to the conservatory, what would be the oldest plant or one of the few, oldest plants that would be in that conservatory?
Well, that's a great question. The historic Palm House has that plant. And so people walk into the Palm House maybe from the second floor and they see this amazing fiddle leaf fig. And that fiddle leaf fig was planted in the early 1900s. So as we think about the historic restoration of the Palm House, of course, that fig is very, very important. So Chris Allen, who's on our board with Allen Arbor Tree Company, he and other folks from the green industry, we've talked about what are we going to do to ensure that this fig continues to thrive even while we're under construction. So we've started doing heavier pruning to get it ready and root pruning. So it's a pretty impressive plant, and people look at it and are really excited. But now as I'm talking, I realize that we do have older plants, and that would be our bonsai collection. So we have bonsai, which are the miniature trees that are sculpted in the Japanese fashion. And we have some that are several hundred years old. And what I think is really cool about those trees is they can't survive on their own, right? They need human intervention. So they're the perfect example of the interaction between human beings and plants, and not just one human being, because no one has lived 200 years old. So that plant had to be cared for by multiple generations. So those are just a few examples of some of the historic plants that we have at the conservatory.
So when it's all said and done and you want to wrap it up at the conservatory, what kind of legacy would you like to leave?
I think the legacy that I would like to leave after I leave the conservatory someday is to be able to look back and know that we've had a significant impact on the quality of life in our community, but also that we've left the conservatory in a stronger position for the next generation of leaders. We have a lot of new board members that we've been bringing in over the last few years, and we're embarking on the development of a new comprehensive master plan, and of course the North Star. And what I think is exciting is that that group of individuals will be part of the development of the vision for the conservatory for the future, and they will be able to dream and implement that vision without having to worry as much about some of the financial challenges that we were dealing with 15 years ago. So I think making sure that I can look back and know that the organization's in a better position, but also that the impact on the lives of employees and people who have visited the conservatory have been transformed by some of the decisions that we've made.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're really busy, but I'm sure a lot of people learn a lot about the conservatory.
but we encourage everyone to come and visit anytime during the year. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you very much.
If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please hit subscribe so you can get notified when new content comes out. Please share this with anyone who could be inspired by it, and feel free to post any questions so we can be inspired by new content. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in learning more, visit our website at bakercreative.co.